This is a follow-up video on DANG, ticker D-A-N-G. We traded this one actively today, and our first video discussed this move up here and why we took profits here, and then what we were going to be watching for in order to get back into the trade. So you can see we discussed how we like using these horizontal lines in order to gauge where consolidation might happen and where support levels may present themselves. And you can see all these lines have been previously put in before any of this price action over here happened. So at first, you know, after a 5% move from 1080 to 1140, you're going to get some profit taking and consolidation, but that doesn't mean that the stock can't then go on to put in new highs later in the session. No, if it pulls back and it respects support levels and can build a nice little channel here, there's the potential for new highs later in the session. The key thing to monitor is how is the price consolidating, and is it maintaining on to the gains it has established for the session so far. What we want to point out is, notice where we pulled back to on DANG. Right at a support channel that we identified in our first video. We held this level right here and really had a nice shakeout, as evidenced by this volume. A lot of shares traded hands, so people who wanted to get out, they got out. But the thing to note is that even though this shakeout happened on very high volume, what's key is the fact that it still maintained support. So now what this did is it gives us a clear level to watch, because we have really high volume. So all the people who stepped in to buy, they're looking for a bounce. So we can then take this range right here, 1103 to 1121, and we can trade against that range in either direction. What I mean by that is the people who soaked up these shares here, they certainly don't want to see it go below $11.03, because if it does, they may have to consider taking losses. And vice versa, the high side, 1121, the people who have been flushed out and the people who maybe missed the entry in 1105 to 1110, they're probably now, they're going to wait to see if it can break back above the top of this range before jumping in the trade. So we built a nice channel here, and also notice, as we discussed earlier, with these rounded bottoms that we like seeing, we had another, round bottom here form on this chart, kind of like a check mark of sorts, and that's key in establishing an intraday bottom. You really want to pick up on these, rounded bottoms or check mark type bottoms, because they can be a sign that the stock is only pulling back within a greater uptrend and is likely to continue to new highs. Also, what we want to note is, notice that the high for the day coming into this move, 1242 going into 1 o'clock, if you look back here at the open, was 1108. So notice that even though we pulled back here from the 1140 high, it was still able to maintain above the highs from the morning, which is very important. So we get a nice, clearly defined support level here that we can now use to trade against. And for instance, you could have entered a trade here, and now you can put a stop at 1103, this low, maybe 11 bucks depending on how aggressive you wanted to get. And also, we want to point out what happened after we moved higher here. We got the 1121 break right here. And then once again, notice this nice consolidation. It's able to put in a higher low. We have a nice series of higher lows that developed on this throughout the day. Here's our first one, our second one, third, fourth, and then up here, once we get up here and we get this breakout and then another pullback here, it's still a higher low. So we're putting in a nice trend on the day. And what's nice about that is you can get a nice trend line going here, kind of intraday. And so the trend is clearly in the bull's favor. Nothing has been violated. We've had pullbacks, but they've been constructive pullbacks. Profit taking is gonna occur. So it's very important to let the chart tell you when to sell and not to get shaken out by a quick 1.5–2% drop in the stock. The chart never gave us a sell signal here in terms of the overall trend. As a matter of fact, it's doing a great job in holding the overall trend. We'll get rid of these trend lines here, and you can see pretty clearly that this stock is in a solid uptrend. There's really nothing to be worried about unless this trend line gets violated. So the other thing you might be asking, well, why did you draw your trend line here? How come you've connected these points as opposed to some other points? Now, many people, novices, might say, you know, oh, trend lines are just a random connection of 2 points on a chart. Really, that's not true. The reason we're taking these 2 points is because this is our first area where we get a clear bounce. So what I mean is, you could have drawn a trend line from here to here, for instance, but we never really got that far established within that trend. There was really never any major bounce above the 1080 level. But once we broke hard off of 1080 and then towards $11, now we have, okay, we can set a clear trend line here that we can use to gauge support and the overall trend for the bulls. And you can see we really followed it up nicely here, and any time it kind of got close to it, it got some nice bounces, and even all the way through the end of the day, it came back to it and started to bounce off of it again. But with all of that said, the main thing to take away here is to establish price channels and think of them in terms of supply and demand channels. Up here above 1108, in the morning, all there was supply. But what happened is we were able to break above that supply zone on very high volume. So when you pull back to it, now the psychology of the market, this supply zone now has the potential to turn into a demand zone because people have seen it go from 11 to 1150, so they're thinking, okay, if it comes back down to 1110, a previous area of supply, is that area now going to turn into a level of demand? And you can tell from the chart that that is exactly what happened. 11 to 1110, a previous area of supply, as evidenced by the early morning trading, then turned into an area of demand, and we were able to break out to new highs. And then the other thing I want to bring the attention to is our resistance was right here at the high of the day. We'll call it, 1130 to 1142 or so. And notice how strong the volume is right here on this candle as we begin to breach the 1140 level and get back into it. The volume is very, very strong, which was an indicator that there's a lot of demand. So yes, this area, once again, touching on the supply zone factor, this area was a level of supply between 1130 1138 to 1142 or so. This area represented supply as evidenced by the profit taking that occurred. So what you need to get through that supply is high volume. Just like we needed really high volume to get through this area of supply here in the middle of the day, we're also going to need high volume to get through this area of supply later in the day. So you can see real high volume, which confirms the breakout. And then once again, notice that after we were able to get above this level of supply, it then acted as support, and we got a nice price channel here between 1140 and 1150 really. Now we started to see buyers come in here instead of sellers. So it was no longer acting as a supply channel. There was enough demand to keep shares trading at the high of the day for the remainder of the day, which is very bullish moving forward. So now really quickly we'll just bring things out and look at a chart, take a 50-day chart, and you can see here we're going to be trading against this low of 1040. Really, I don't want to see it go back below 11 bucks. There's been a lot of good work done on the chart, and you want to see where are potential levels of supply likely to kick in. Well, to me, it's pretty evident. If you take this congestion here, we're looking at a clear supply level up here. But if the volume can remain strong, we can get a nice move here up to 1280s to $14 range. So stick with it, watch for the pullbacks, make sure that they're putting in higher lows, and this chart is in pretty good shape and might make for a nice continuation off of the bottom.